Hello and welcome to the DRS Zone podcast. A couple of days after a brilliant Australian Grand Prix. My name is Ed Wyatt. Alongside me, I have to admit, budding superstar, my 15-year-old son, Sam. We'll talk about that and plenty more in a bit. How are you feeling?
Feeling great, feeling really good after a great weekend at the AusGP. Couldn't have asked for more, and we will get right into it, won't we?
Well, we certainly will. And I think I've been coming to the Australian Grand Prix. Well, I think I went initially in 2000, maybe 2001. And in the race now, the event is so much different than it was then. It's like a completely different event. It's one of the great, if not the greatest event on the calendar here in Melbourne. And I include grand finals in the AFL and the tennis. I just think this has become an unbelievable event.
F1, F2, F3, you got concerts, you got celebrities, you've got other events, historical races going on. There's so much to go and see and do around the track. Such a big track. It's like one part you're at the Melbourne Swimming Aquatic Centre, and on the other side you're over in towards the sticks with dust and play centers for the kids, and it's so different around the whole track, but it's very entertaining, and I think it is the best event on the calendar here.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? And I think, we were laughing about there's a Ralph Lauren place where you could go in and sample some fragrances, but that's just all part of the changing demographic, really. So many women, so many young people, so many families. They're definitely still the old petrol heads, as they say over here, the old timers, the hardcores that are in line to watch the supercars as well as the F1. But the Drive to
Yeah,
Survive phenomenon has really opened it up to a whole new group of people. And it's no surprise that it's selling out. I mean, it was sold out, 400,000 people, something like that, over 4 days.
450,
Yeah,
450.
ridiculous. Just
Yeah.
incredible. Unbelievable stuff. The and the thing that was great was, we know in the past, and we're not going to dwell on this too much. We're not do too much navel gazing, if you will. But in the past, you've had an opportunity to do a few things on television. And last year, sit in briefly with the guys at Track TV, Cameron Vanden Dungen and Greg Rust, and it was just an opportunity. Now they invited you back in to sit in on practice two, which was going to be about 15 minutes, ended up being an hour. That was incredible.
Yeah, I was able to be calling the whole hour of the practice. It was an incredible experience, and I'll never forget it. I was able to call Charles Leclerc's lap as he brought it home in the final sector. That was a dream come true. But yeah, it was really unbelievable. Big thanks to everyone who helped me this weekend and gave me the experience I did, and it was really unbelievable.
Yeah, it was just the number of people who had gone out of their way to give you advice and help. The virtual stat man, Sean Kelly, spent probably a half an hour with you, just sort of talking about his life and what he did and the things that you can do as you go forward. That was incredible. We caught up with some other podcasters. The Paddock 43 girls were phenomenal, so nice. The Formula Fools that we just sort of started listening to a little while ago, the guys from Brisbane, they were great. Coach Cole, who I worked with on a couple of other things, he was out and about, and all these people sort of were able to offer you a lot of advice and assistance. And the bottom line is, just a little behind the scenes for the listeners, my wife and I were out sitting at a table watching on a small screen while you were in the Paddock Club, just a cricket ball toss away from Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris and everybody else. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was a great experience. People giving me food, people all drinking alcohol around me, celebrities there. Uh, and I was just sitting out on the bar and in the sun, looking at the screen, and then you look at the screen and Lewis Hamilton went out. Everyone, oh no. You wait 5 minutes, you keep watching the race, you look right down. Oh, Lewis Hamilton's on his scooter heading into the paddock, just a meter away from you, just casually. Seven-time world champion, just scootering right past you after he's crashed out of the race. That's the most unbelievable experience I can ever remember in my entire life. And it is surreal moment.
Yeah, well, it wasn't so surreal for us sitting in the sun watching it on a very small screen, but we're very, very happy for you. Let's get to the race because you actually and others, it wasn't just you, talked about how Australia can throw up some interesting results. Unpredictable things often happen at the Albert Park circuit. And it certainly did happen here. And yes, there you go, waving your with your Ferrari shirt on, a Ferrari 1-2 after Max Verstappen has a brake issue. His brakes catch on fire. Crowd
Back in
roared,
the
by the way.
title.
Crowd
Back
roared,
in
by
the
the way.
title.
They
It
are
did,
back in
it
the
did.
title.
Everyone was loving it when Max Verstappen's brakes caught fire.
Yeah,
They
I think,
were loving it.
well, because he's been so dominant. And one of the things that
Even at the Paddock Club, people were
yeah,
cheering.
absolutely. He's been so dominant,
Yeah.
hasn't had any mistakes. Suddenly, bang, Red Bull has a problem. Max goes out, whole place erupts, and we've suddenly
I
got a
don't
race.
I don't want to expose anyone, but we'll just keep it between you and me. I saw some Ferrari mechanics cheering when Max went out.
Did you? Well, of
I
course.
saw some high fives and some fist bumps and a little bit of excitement down there.
Well, it's very
Uh,
special for Ferrari
They
in
were a bit excited.
of course they were. Very special for Ferrari here in Melbourne. As we know, the Tifosi, huge crowds in Melbourne, big Italian population here. Ferrari has always been super popular. End of the race, all the mechanics and staffers are singing the Italian national anthem. Just great
So
scenes.
loud.
And
So loud.
and Sam, we were this close from having a dream scenario for Melbourne. Can you imagine if it were Sainz, Leclerc, Piastri?
Piastri.
That would have been
Unbelievable.
incredible.
You just it would have been unbelievable. No one would have been unhappy with that result except for Red Bull fans. But
if it
they're irrelevant.
if it were a football match, they would have been leaving after just as the race started because they didn't want to stick around and watch
Like West
Ferrari.
Ham fans against
Yeah,
Arsenal.
exactly right. But it
Or
was
Sheffield against Arsenal.
the remarkable situation was McLaren going 3-4
Yeah.
behind the Ferrari 1-2. I think that was great. In the hometown crowd, we talked about this last year. The papaya just easily the most merchandise. Ferrari had a lot, don't get me wrong, so
Yeah,
did Red Bull.
the two with the most merch were the two battling it out for the win.
Absolutely right. There was
Which was
so much
also a reason why it was a dream scenario.
yeah, it
I think
certainly
it's
was.
good for the sport that this kind of scenario is not, say, a couple years ago. We'll use an example, let's say. The 2020 Italian Grand Prix. Max Verstappen's out of the race. Valtteri Bottas has no pace. Lewis Hamilton has received a penalty. And it's Pierre Gasly against Carlos Sainz against Lance Stroll for the victory of the Grand Prix. And it was those three on the podium, and Pierre Gasly won in his AlphaTauri. But everyone was just so shocked. And the fact that he held on. And I'll give you another example. The 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix, when there was carnage on the first lap, Max Verstappen, Perez, Norris, Bottas, Leclerc, all out or severely damaged to their car. Lewis Hamilton, the only driver to start the race. Then he came in the pit lane. He lost a heap of time. And Esteban Ocon was able to hold on. And it was just unbelievable. But this time, Max is out. Lewis is out. Perez has not got a lot of pace. Sainz and Leclerc, Lando and Piastri. It doesn't feel like it's a shock. It really doesn't feel like it's a shock.
Agreed.
And I think that's good for the sport. The fact that the main talking point isn't Red Bull weren't there. The main talking point is Ferrari won the AusGP, but not in the way that I can't believe this.
Well, Ferrari had
You know
pace.
what I mean?
Ferrari
Ferrari
had pace. Leclerc had
and they
pace.
could
Made
have
the mistake though.
challenged. They could have challenged even if Max didn't have trouble. If Leclerc didn't mess up and put it on pole position,
Agreed.
which he definitely could have,
Yep.
he could have easily won the race. So I
Yeah, I
think
think like this is a really, really good point. I think that's a great point. Going forward, and this is something we'll talk about next week because we've got a special podcast planned, but the decision to bring Hamilton to Ferrari and let Sainz go is looking stranger and stranger
we
by
don't
the
want to
week.
touch on it
Now it's a
because
long,
we want this next week. Our podcast will be about the
yeah,
2025 and
yeah,
future driver lineup. So we'll talk a lot more. We'll try
yep,
not to talk too much about it, but we will talk a lot about that and where Sainz could go,
yep.
what Ferrari's best option is, what every team's best option is. But we
It's
will briefly touch on it now
I just
because
wanted to say that
it's
Hamilton's
it's a
out of the
tough
race.
situation that it's not. I say Hamilton's out of the race. People go, yeah, that's not his fault. Yeah, George Russell was quicker the entire weekend, as he has been every single
It's been
race this
quicker all
year.
year.
And
Yeah,
last year he was quicker for most of it. Carlos Sainz has won the last two races that Red Bull haven't won. He's
yeah.
the only driver to have beaten Red Bull this year and last year. And Ferrari go, we'll keep Leclerc, get rid of this guy. He's terrible, even though he's the only one who can win a race. Let's bring in 38-year-old Lewis Hamilton. No disrespect to who I think is the greatest of all time, but he's not the greatest of all time anymore.
Mm,
He's not driving the way he did a couple years ago.
no, no, he's not. And
To bring him
mentally,
into a team
I
who
don't know.
could challenge, he's still quick, but Carlos Sainz is a lot quicker. And unpopular opinion here, today you put Alonso and Lewis in a Red Bull, Alonso wins the race. I think
Interesting.
Fernando is quicker now.
Mm,
All time, Lewis wins, but I'm not convinced Lewis still has it.
yeah.
He's still a talented driver, but I'm not convinced he has what he did even 2 years ago, last year.
There's a lot of mental issues, I think, with Hamilton around that car, around Mercedes, around that
He
blown
said it's his
world
worst start to the
championship.
season ever.
Yeah, it's been a nightmare. He just doesn't look connected, doesn't look interested, and that was kind of the worry. Some people said when you sign to go somewhere else in a year, are you going to still stay in? I don't know. And Russell's dusting him, as you said. So
Yeah.
anyway, we'll get into that more, as you said, next week. Russell just makes it a terrible weekend for Mercedes and
Mercedes.
crashes on the last lap.
Yeah, every single race Carlos Sainz has won in his career, George Russell has either crashed on the first or last lap of the race.
So strange, so bizarre. It
Yeah.
was just, and look, the other talking point, not worth belaboring because Piastri already shut down any controversy, was the concept of letting
The
Lando go
switch.
ahead, yeah, of Oscar. And Piastri
Well,
said,
Lando was
problem with
quicker.
it.
Lando was quicker. And don't say, you never know.
I,
He was quicker.
yeah,
He was only 5 seconds off the Ferraris in the end. Piastri was 10 or something.
but who knows if
He was
Piastri would have
quicker.
been no matter. I agree. And like I
He
said,
was quicker.
Oscar's already done the team thing, which he does so well. He's made it again, if he can, more fans than he has already, which is hard to do because he's got a ton of them.
Yeah.
Couple other things in the race. Double points for Haas. Hulkenberg
Yeah.
9 and K-Magan 10. How about that?
It's good for them. It really is. I mean, it is a tough battle between the bottom few teams, and every point, I do think it could be one of the lowest scoring seasons for the bottom half teams,
Yep.
drivers and teams included.
Yep.
These 3 points for Haas, they could end up winning or being sixth or seventh in the championship by 1 point. So these
Well,
points are so crucial. And you
you're right.
remember the money difference from finishing 6th to 10th is
Yep.
just unthinkable. And the fact that that's come from 2 points potentially
Well,
is just, it's so important.
well, here's the thing. Alpine are terrible. Kick Sauber are terrible.
Now, I think
there's an opportunity for
quickly,
Haas here. Hang on, let me finish. Opportunity for Haas because I don't think those teams, Stake, whatever you want to call them, Kick, F1, Sauber, Stake,
Kick Sauber.
they can't even get a pit stop together. They're butchering it. That's a
Bottas must
disgrace.
have something wrong with him. Every team he's at, he can't do a pit stop.
Yeah,
He must bring some energy that makes the car want to keep the wheels on the car.
I don't know, but they're no good, and Alpine continue to be a disaster.
See, the thing with Alpine, hear me out. I think this could be a bit of a McLaren situation, but a worse version. Last year, McLaren were pretty bad at the start of the season.
Yep,
They came back after the winter break and they were challenging for podiums.
true.
I think this could be Alpine's scenario. Two strong drivers, smart mechanics, team principals, engineers. It's a good team. It's just not a good car. If they can get it figured out, I have no doubt by the end of the year they can get points. I
Okay,
think they will be able to
we will see, but
get their act together. They're
it's
not going to finish fourth or fifth,
no.
but I think sixth place is the goal, and I think they can definitely achieve that later on in the season.
Well, who's the best driver of the rest? The bottom 10. Who's having the best year so far, the bottom 10? I'll tell you who I think it is.
Yuki.
Sonoda. Absolutely
I think
right.
Yuki Tsunoda.
Yep, I think you're right.
Is he the best driver? No. But is he having the best season?
Yeah,
Definitely.
he certainly is. And he's out.
See, I think Gasly, Ocon, and if we're talking all time, Ricciardo's better. Bottas is better.
No, I'm not talking about all time. I don't care about
But
Bottas.
if you're talking about actual pace this year,
yeah,
I think
that's what I'm
Ocon,
talking about.
Gasly, and Albon are better drivers. But
Yeah.
Tsunoda's having a really good year.
He's having a way better
really
year.
Good year.
Yep, I think you're
And
right.
he's just dominating Daniel.
What about Williams? Now, we talked about this. Albon crashes a car. They've only got one. They don't bring an extra chassis. So
Albon crashed in the same spot in the race last year.
And so he's got to use Sargeant's car because they don't have enough money, or they're not advanced to the point where they can have another chassis, which I think, again, is disgraceful for a team that has millions of dollars. I know they're not Red Bull. I know they're not Ferrari, but how do you not have that? How do you not have an extra chassis to bring into a race? That's
because they're not getting points and they're not a good team. That's why.
Yeah, well, you got to find a way to get to get. You're not going to get better by doing things like that, sticking Albon in Sargeant's car. I mean, that's amateurish, in my opinion. That's we're not going to let Andretti on the grid, but we've got a team on there that doesn't even bring an extra chassis and has to put a driver and boot another driver out.
Not many people want Andretti on the grid. I don't want Andretti on the grid. There's already enough as it is, and there's one driver who wins every race and 5 drivers who are last in every race, and now they're going to bring more into the situation.
I guarantee you they have more.
Are not going to be winning races or doing points. They will be the worst team.
No way, no chance.
Yes, they will.
They'll come in. It'll be better than Haas tomorrow.
Oh yeah, their lineup.
They'll be better than Williams.
Their lineup of like
100%
and Oliver Beerman.
They'll get somebody, man. Trust me.
Inexperienced drivers.
They'll get
2 Americans and North Americans, and they're really lighting it up. Stroll, Latifi, Logan Sargeant, really lighting it up.
Andretti's smarter than that. He's not going to just throw in Colton Herta and somebody else. He'll get
Who
one
else is available?
One else.
He's not getting Carlos Sainz.
Who knows?
He's not getting Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz is not going there.
If Andretti were in, maybe he would. He's got money. He wants maybe he wants to drive a Cadillac. They'll give him a free Cadillac to come join him. Anyway, look, I think it was very unfortunate.
Red Bull give him a free championship. See which one he chooses.
It's unfortunate that they had to make that call and bump Sargeant out. I think we were joking beforehand, and I think they did make the right call ultimately. But on the other hand,
100%.
they did, and it is also it's a car that's set to Sargeant, not to Williams or to Albon the way they set it up. So he finished 11th. It doesn't surprise me that he didn't finish in the points, though. Yeah, he finished 11th, Albon.
11th is pretty good.
It's all right.
Williams. Here's the thing. I think it's a bit unfair for Logan Sargeant.
Yeah.
But given the situation of only having 2 cars, and I'm not going to completely quote James Vowles, who I did end up meeting.
You did had a chat with him.
He is very nice guy, very professional, and I can see him going places in the future. But anyways, we'll get back on topic. He said this in an interview, and I'm not going to fully quote him, but I'll take some bits, I'll add some bits, and I'll just sum it up.
Okay.
Given the situation of the one chassis left, you look at as I've said the whole season, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin, and McLaren are light years ahead of
those five. Yep.
Haas, Visa Cash App RB, Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber, Alpine, and Williams.
Yep.
They're miles ahead. Let's be real.
Agreed.
And as I said, Stroll's probably the weakest link. So you could probably get a few points there, which Hulkenberg has, Magnussen has, Tsunoda has found a lot of opportunity for that. And 3 of those spots actually available this week. Hulkenberg, Magnussen, and Tsunoda, because George, Lewis, and Verstappen all didn't finish the race. So it's more dire than ever. And as I said earlier, 6th to 10th could be 3 points at the end of this year. Yep. It could be like 7 points, 3 points, 2 points, 2 points, 1 point.
I'll give you that. Yep.
In the teams.
Yep.
And if you're Williams, you've got one driver who might crash, but is way quicker and has got podiums at Red Bull than a driver who has scored 1 point in his career.
Yep.
In the season where they need even 1 point could give them the money that could fund them the 3rd chassis next year.
Hey, very good point. I like it.
You need to take Albon.
Yep.
It's not even a thought. It's a tough call to make, but you have to make the call, and it's the right call.
I agree.
And I think given the circumstances, it's right.
Yep.
If it's, say, Ferrari and Sainz has crashed it, and they go, well, because Sainz won last week, Leclerc, we're booting you out.
Yeah, different.
When they're, say, 10 races on, when Red Bull's 100 points clear and Mercedes is 100 points behind them, I will not be happy. But I think here it's different because of how dire it is and the gap between the drivers.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I think it's a really good point. You worded that really, really well.
Thank you.
Before we wrap it up, and as I said, we'll do a podcast next week that will talk about driver positions next year and also preview Japan. I did want to mention the Sky broadcast. They've changed for this Grand Prix, and I think Japan and China doing it out of their studio in London rather than sending the crew over here. Now they've sent Brundle and Crofty, and they've sent Rachel and Ted.
I got a photo with Ted.
You did indeed.
Brief chat with Ted Kravitz.
He's
a bit of an odd character, but anyway, story for another day.
Yeah, story for another day. The studio looks good, but it's very sanitized. It's very sterile, and I prefer to
VR video game.
Yeah, I prefer to see them on here in the pit and with people buzzing around them. Like, think about when Simon and Naomi and Damon Hill are sitting there having a conversation. People are walking past, they'll grab George Russell, that sort of thing. Here they were doing it all in video, and it just doesn't have that same vitality.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And can we talk about when they first go to that and the drivers are on the virtual podium? Why do they stare into the camera like that? Then the camera moves and then their eyes just like shift like that. Their heads stay the same, but their eyes like turn around.
Welcome to
Why do they look so realistic but so scary at the same time?
It is scary. If you don't know what we're talking about, look at the coverage of the Japanese Grand Prix next week, and you'll see what we're talking about.
Unless they remove it because I was complaining.
Yeah, I think they'll do that.
If you don't see it, go back to Melbourne and watch.
Anything else before we go? An unbelievable weekend for us, for all of us, but also for the fans and for Ferrari fans and McLaren fans in particular.
Yeah.
Anything else to add?
I think if we forget anything, we can talk about it. We'll do predictions in our next
exactly.
podcast.
Yep, exactly. Yep. I agree.
Yeah, we're going to need the extra time because honestly, I have no idea what to think. Ferrari are back. Are Red Bull in trouble?
Yeah, it's going to take a little time. I would suspect they're not. Anyway, this is for another time.
Anyways,
this has been the DRS Zone. I'm Ed White. He's Sam White. You can find this at Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. And again, thank you to everyone we met at the Australian Grand Prix this weekend and everyone that helped us out and had a piece of advice for Sam. It was really special, and we thank you very much for that. We will see you next week with a special podcast and a preview of the Japanese Grand Prix.